we're here, aren't we? Okay, good evening, folks. I think it's almost 6 o'clock. I haven't quite heard the chime from the Town Hall Tower yet, but I'm looking around the room. We're all looking comfortable like it is 6 o'clock, and we all know why we're here. So we will crack on. Welcome to our guests. Great to see so many of you here tonight. There are no practice evacuations or anticipated alarms, so if such does happen, please make your way downstairs via the main staircase or the side staircase. Rendezvous in the car park in an orderly fashion. The meeting, as ever, is broadcast live over the internet and will be available on Catch Up for the council to receive huge advertising revenues in the future. Please make sure you use our microphones. That's to be inclusive so that everyone has a chance to participate, and try and avoid speaking too loudly into them, as I often do, because that will cause popping. Toilets are available on this floor. If at any point throughout tonight anyone needs a comfort break at all, just catch my eye. I'll be pragmatic about it. We will try and have a comfort break at 7:30, but depending on where we are with the agenda, it might be a little bit before, a bit after, but I'm happy to be flexible. Discreet use of digital devices is obviously okay, but if we can make sure they're not making noises. I'm Darius Laws. I'm Chairman of the scrutiny panel, and tonight the statutory function of crime and disorder, in which we have to meet every year, and I represent rural North, the villages north of Colchester. So can I please go around the room, starting off on my left, to have introductions, please?
Councillor Natalie Summers, St Anne's St John's Ward, substitute for Councillor Paul Smith.
Councillor Kayleigh Rippingale, representing Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Claire Osborne, representing Shrub End Ward.
Andrew Tyrrell, Head of Public Protection.
Dennis Willits, Lexton and Braeswick Ward.
Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Jocelyn Law, Portfolio Holder for Communities and Public Protection and Ward Councillor for Highwoods.
Paul Donachie, Licensing, Community Safety, Safeguarding Manager and Chair of the CSP.
Samantha Goodman, Community Safety Officer.
Chief Inspector Michelle Sparks, District Commander for Colchester.
Beverly Jones, CEO of Next Chapter.
Vincent Jeeves, Business Improvement District Manager for Colchester.
Nick Singleton, Station Manager for Colchester, Tiptree and Wivenhoe, representing Essex County Fire and Rescue Service.
Thanks, everyone. We don't appear to have any visiting members of the public or councillors here tonight, though I know that we do have someone online that we'll come to shortly. I just wanted to make the point that we do obviously allow visiting councillors to come along and have their say, and perhaps on occasion rogue chairmen like myself are a bit flexible and perhaps sometimes allow some of our visiting councillors a bit too much airtime, and it's important to remind ourselves that there is rules and protocols, and if a visiting councillor is to come and visit, then they get to have their say, and then they retreat into the public gallery, having had a suitable response and maybe a quick comeback, but it's not an active participatory situation for a visiting councillor. So I just wanted to put that on record, because I am aware that in previous meetings I've perhaps probably been a bit relaxed. Who knows whether I will go back to the rules or deviate again, but I am conscious of it, which is something. There are no urgent items I'm aware of scheduled for this evening. Declarations of interest, members. I see none. Okay. Minutes of previous meetings. There was a slight administrative error, so disregard the May minutes. It's the 11th of March 2025 minutes, which we're seeking approval on, which did have some recommendations, which I believe we can touch on, but that hopefully have been implemented throughout the year. But I'm happy to support that they are an accurate reflection of the meeting. I was here in that meeting. Do I see all in favour, or at least a majority? I do. It looks unanimous. Thank you. Minutes approved. Okay, item 6 is have your say, and the only contributor that I'm aware of is Councillor Lee Scordis, Old Heath and Hive Division, and he is online. Is this correct?
He's emailed to say that Zoom's chosen now to update, so he's doing his best to join us when he can.
Okay, wow. Will you multitask with your minutes and watching those emails? And when Councillor Scordis is available, we can perhaps bring him in at an appropriate moment. I'm guessing it's not going to be now. I don't see Councillor Scordis online just yet, so I think we will crack on, and you will have to kick me under the table hard if I forget, but hopefully we'll welcome Councillor Scordis when he's got through the technological boundaries. All right. So, what are we here for tonight? Well, as has been mentioned, this is a statutory function that we perform here, and we look at the Community Safety Partnership, which is a collection of organisations, of course involving the police, in looking at how we can make Colchester and surrounding villages a safe place. And to introduce a brief presentation, we have obviously the portfolio holder who this falls within your remit. You're on the executive, you liaise with these guys on a regular basis, and I know that you are briefed regularly by officers internally from this authority to see how we can go about making Colchester an even better place. So on that note, Councillor Law, would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the panel. So I'm here tonight, as you pointed out, in my role as portfolio holder for communities and public protection. And as part of that role, I get to attend regular meetings and briefings, forums. I attend meetings such as the Community Safety Delivery Board and also Safer Essex meetings. And I guess that you could say that those activities and the activities that we'll be discussing here tonight really are underlined by, as you've pointed out, an effort to work towards ensuring that we keep residents and the community of Colchester safe and well. And we know also that there are often multiple causes of crime, and it's really important that our Community Safety Partnership is made up of a broad range of organisations with a wide range of expertise and experience that can help in the programme delivery and implementation to tackle those broad causes of crime and to help keep people safe. And I'm really grateful as well for the work of our partner organisations through the year and for those that were able to attend this evening and take part in the discussion. And finally, I'd just like to touch on the importance of the evidence-led approach, which has gone to providing the reports, the assessment, and also proposed key areas of focus. And for that sort of work, we will draw on statistics and crimes reported to police, for example. And I know from having been myself a scrutiny panel member in the past that sometimes members will have a different view or perception, perhaps, particularly if crimes are showing a decrease or an increase. And obviously, when reports are compiled, we have to use a particular statistical basis. And I know something that myself and colleagues here will be keen to raise awareness of is encouraging all our residents to report crimes to the relevant authorities. That's very important. And I would say to my councillor colleagues as well, I know that sometimes residents can be apprehensive about that, but it's really great if we can encourage and support residents. And we also have very experienced community safety colleagues in the council and safeguarding officer who can help provide a resource and help us support our residents. I think that's enough from me, and I'll pass on now to Paul for the rest of the presentation. Thank
Paul,
you.
if you don't mind, just because we've got Councillor Scordis in the wings, and I think it would be right to try and keep the agenda as per the schedule. So let's introduce Councillor Scordis, and then we'll come back to you, Paul, for the slideshow. Councillor Scordis, I can see you, so just want to say a few words so we can hear you in this room.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks for having me.
That's great. We can hear you, Councillor Scordis, so proceed at your leisure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, panel. So today I am speaking about my concerns regarding the response times from the police. Had many different stories just affecting my own area. One includes a youth club that had someone turn up very drunk, very aggressive. The people running the youth club rang 999. They were told it's not urgent. No police came. Clearly a safeguarding issue with the amount of children that we did have present. Few days later, same chap turns up to the same community centre and it's the same response. It's really just not good enough. And I would be interested to hear what the policy is from the control room, because this does become a leadership matter. And another instance involves the Mayor of Colchester, who many will know lost his brother. And the family could not get into the home. They were ringing around, ringing 999. No one would help. An ambulance was 6 hours away, while Councillor Lily's brother lay dying on the floor. I mean, frankly, it's disgusting, and it's just not good enough. And we see it time and time again. We report drug dealing, it's never dealt with. It takes months for any evidence to be taken seriously. And again, I'm not blaming the police on the ground. They're fantastic. They love what they're doing. I don't think they're being helped by leadership higher up. We had a debate at full council, as you know, Chair, on Team 10. And we haven't really seen progress there. I've been talking to the teams. They still feel that on the ground they're not being supported. Businesses don't feel supported. So for me, Chair, there's a lot of debate to be had about the leadership, not just in Colchester, but from Essex Police generally around the control centre, and what we can do to make the city centre safer and a better relationship with our businesses. I mean, you've highlighted yourself the preachers and so forth. It is not a good look for Colchester, but we know that the street drinkers still become an issue, a constant issue, and it'll be worse as it gets warmer. So I want to make sure that we're in a good place as we get to nicer weather, not the rain we've been having this last month. And make sure that, again, Colchester is a welcoming town, whether it's our residents popping into town or is someone coming to Colchester to experience our fantastic culture and heritage for the first time.
Okay, Councillor Scores, thank you for that. And you're right, I have raised my personal concerns around the amplification and the potential low-level ASB that gets derived from that, and that is probably a live conversation. I saw some amplification and some interesting dancing happening the other day with some characters who'd probably been consuming things they shouldn't have been. And actually, I watched for a few moments, and I saw that our wardens did go over and approach them, and the music did stop. Right. You've obviously raised two very specific incidents there, and as we reflect on what you've said, and we must all, have the Mayor in our thoughts over that matter, but without wishing to put the Chief Inspector on the spot around the specific cases that you've mentioned, perhaps at minimum, Michelle, if you're agreeable, you might respond around the generality of response times and any context to help Councillor Scordis, and I'll leave it up to you whether or not you feel comfortable addressing the specifics that have been raised tonight, but I would happily shield you if you weren't, because obviously it's about a couple of very personal matters. But over to you, Chief Inspector.
First of all, thank you, Councillor Scordis, for the question. I think it's really important us to reflect on the very sad death of Mayor Lily's brother. It's very sad. My condolences very much to his family, and the offer is there to meet him personally. That has been sent out for quite some time, and that offer remains on the table should he wish to discuss those personal matters with him. In response to response times, there are a couple of things that we need to make clear in relation to the way in which police do respond to emergency incidences, how we deal with information that's received into the control room, and also I want to touch on right care, right person, which is what Councillor Scordis is referring to. I am aware of the incidences, and he has had a response back to me personally already in relation to that youth club incident, so I'm happy that that one has actually been already responded to outside of this forum. So in relation to police responses, we have got different gradings in relation to our response and our response times. We are supposed to be able to get to incidences within 15 minutes if they are in a urban area, and within 20 minutes if they are in a rural area. area defined as P1 and P2 priority response incidences. We also have P3s and all the way through to P6s, which some of it might be non-attendance. Those calls are graded by the control room based on the information that we receive at the time, and obviously depending on the location of those as to be what that response is. And what's really clear is that we must ensure that we are responding to the information that we receive from the members of the public, and ensuring that actually the right people respond to the incident that is being reported to us. What is really important that everybody here understands the right care, right person policy, and that has mainly come out as a result of dealing with mental health incidences, but actually this is applicable to lots of different incidences whereby the police may be called into action. It is a national policy, it's not an Essex police policy, it is national, it's by the College of Policing, and that policy is in relation to making sure that the right agencies deal with the issue as it's in hand. So for instance, it is important that actually if it is a medical emergency, those people with correct medical skills respond before policing do. Those people with the right skills to be able to deal with that incident respond appropriately depending on the information that we receive at the time. And in relation to one of those incidences, it was deemed that it was a medical issue and actually the ambulance were the right people to respond in that time. We take our lead from the right lead agency in those incidences. They did not deem it to be a medical emergency, and therefore we did not respond as a result of the information that they were sharing with us in that particular incident. And that obviously that has been played out in the media as well, and I refer you to those comments made professionally in those circumstances. So it's really important that we have got the right information that is shared with us at the time in order to make the right decision to send the right unit up the right grade of response that we're required to do that. That information comes from our members of the public, and my plea to anybody that is calling on 999 is to be accurate and truthful around what they are saying to us to ensure that actually we're getting the right response. I'm sure that you would have heard on news articles all over the place that often we get called for things which aren't emergencies. It's really important that we only get called and our resources only attend to those things which are real and important, and we need to do that based on the information that we receive from the individuals, and that is full and honest in relation to that. In relation to the third incident which Mr. Scordis, Councillor Scordis raised, was in relation to the drugs. I think it's really important to understand that we can't deal with one single strand of information. It's information before it gets assessed, it only becomes intelligence once it's assessed by police. And as Councillor Laws has already said this evening, it's really important that actually for us to be able to assess the increasing amount of information, to turn that into intelligence, we can only do that if we have repeated reports. Unfortunately, as we've seen on a number of occasions, some of those reports might go through to local councils, councillors. It might in fact end up on social media, but it doesn't necessarily come into policing through the right policing avenues. If it doesn't come in through that way, we are not necessarily cited on that information, we can't assess it, and we can't treat it as intelligence. It often will take a period of time in order to build up the correct intelligence picture for us to have sufficient enough information to go to a magistrate to get a warrant in this instance for drugs that we were referring to. The magistrates need to be sure that we are using our powers in order to enter a property correctly, effectively, efficiently, legally, proportionately, and in order to do that we need to be sure that we've got all of that information. And actually the incident that we're referring to recently, as Councillor Rippingell will know, is that actually we've taken some information that was shared with us through her and through Councillor Scordis to be able to deal with that information, feed that into our ongoing intelligence picture, and we were able to respond once we had that intelligence picture in place. We've had some really good positive outcomes in relation to that. So my plea is continue to talk to the police, continue to report with as much information as you possibly can. If things are ongoing, don't just report it once, report it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times for us to be able to build up that picture of dates and times and places and people. The richer the information that we've got, the better we can deal with the information, to deal with the incidents in front of us. So in entirety responding to those things. Response times overall in Colchester are really good compared to some of our other counterparts across the county. We are getting to those incidents within around 80% of our target times, which actually is where our target is supposed to be, around 80%. Or sometimes we won't be able to get them because they're just too far away or it's the time of day. So actually we're doing really well in getting to those incidents. Right care, right person, we need to make sure that we've got the right information, and actually the right people need to deal with those incidences, and finally make sure that you're continuing to report to us.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scordis, would you like to respond to anything you've heard?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief Inspector. One of the things that I have been talking about for almost a decade and we never see is that we have this information, residents have reported it, they've given us our details, and then they're contacting councillors going, nothing's happening, so forth. Surely there's a way of officers contacting them, just saying, thank you for this information, making it very personal and saying, here's what we're doing. Or at least just an indication, there's a name, there's a contact, they are trying. Because I think people do report crimes and they just get fed up of, they don't see anything happening, they don't see the plainclothes operations, obviously. It just seems such an easy win for everyone just to have an officer who's dealing with it, who will likely have the email to say, thank you so much for this, please give us, elaborate, or here we are on the case and thank you so much. That will make that person feel so much more comfortable. Just seems an easy win, and I don't know why it hasn't been happening. As I say, been bringing it up for a decade now.
Thank you for your comment. I think it's fair to say that actually communication is sometimes a struggle and shouldn't be. And I think you're right, there is that feedback loop that helps us to be able to encourage people to report. I think that's actually really important, and I take those points on board. A lot of the reporting that does come into policing is anonymous. It's through Crime Stoppers. So often we don't have that ability to go back because people don't necessarily have the confidence to come forward. Or often when I have information come to me directly, it's through the councillors because those individuals aren't happy to report to police. So sometimes that is a bit of a challenge, but what I would say is that we should be responding to those individuals that have shared their details with us, and we should be saying thank you. That may not happen as timely as we may well like, and sometimes that's because we're in that position of developing the intelligence, bringing everything together. We might also want to not jeopardise any of the investigations that we've got. So I absolutely take on board those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scores. I think that was a very helpful observation there. So thank you for your contribution tonight, and we will now progress, and we're going to return back to Paul and the slideshow.
Thank you.
How many slides do you have, sir? Is it under 20?
10.
Very good.
But I'm going to talk for half an hour just to make up for it. No. Firstly, apologies for last year, skiving. And I'd like to start with some thanks, if I may, very quickly, for both the previous and current portfolio holder for supporting us, my incredible staff, both here and at home, for actually doing all of this great work, and the CSP partnership and partners who deliver all the time to the best of their ability, whether we are recognised or not. Sorry, I need to, if you go forward two, please. So the report's going to cover the CSP work, or give an overview from April 24 to December 25. It covers the review of the strategic assessment of crime, and there's a review of the risk matrix and the proposed key areas of focus for the forthcoming year. There's a lot of questions about the risk matrix, and very quickly, it comes to us pre-populated in a number of areas, and we are therefore only able to score the areas that are blank, which are how we as a CSP see a priority or area of focus, and how the public have seen it through the crime surveys. Our key partners, again, previously thanked them all, but we have new partners in areas relating to youth, DA, probation service, rehabilitation. So we are strengthening, and that allows us to have broader views and broader opinions, which then means we don't narrow focus. The key findings: crime in Colchester was slightly higher than the Essex average. However, there were significant reductions in drug offences, antisocial behaviour and knife crime. And the community survey showed that the top concerns were fraud and scams, which of course is a national issue, ASB, gangs and county lines, road safety, but public perception had improved around the confidence in policing, which was at the highest in Essex. If you go to next one after that, my friend, and the next one, I'm so fast. So the highlights of our activity for 24-26. Essex Police have strengthened their DA teams with improved disclosure scheme use, youth engagement and spike and prevention campaigns. I would say these are just highlights. There is so much other work that goes on. As a council, stronger together with the VORG education programme, CCTV expansion, and there is more CCTV expansion. The PSPO enforcement, a lot of targeting around the vehicle groups that gather and cause problems. A very successful youth festival. Off the top of my head, I think it was about 1,500 youth, wasn't it? 1,500 youth members attended. Next chapter and Cara, the major increases in referral and support for DA and sexual violence victims and survivors. Our Essex Fire and Rescue colleagues, over 174 school sessions delivered. And with our probation partners, strengthened risk management, MAPA involvement and offender accountability. Again, the probation service are also making changes to strengthen their delivery. We've looked at the way we operate as a group and what we deliver, because I know a lot of the questions were around what do we as a partner, how much is our focus on certain areas. So approximately 30% of action was for safeguarding, 25% promoting safety, preventing domestic abuse, sexual offences 20%, and addressing ASBs 24%. As I've said, partner-wise, we have over 25 organisations involved, and the majority of our actions were completed or are in progress. Statistics, everyone's favourite, depending on whether you want to look at it. On a rolling 12-month basis, to the end of December 25, crime had increased by 0.3%, which was 51 more offences. However, there were reductions of violence with injury. Violence without injury was reduced, robbery was reduced, residential burglary reduced, business and community burglary reduced. There were some increases. Sexual offences increased by 7.5%, so that was 57 more offences, and there was 1.4% increase in DA. ASB had dropped. Our priorities for 2026 is to continue the high visibility policing through Operations Minerva and Vigilant, expand the youth diversion, because if we can obviously give opportunities to our younger people to keep them out of crime and protect them. We're delivering the Fearless Online Safety campaign. We're strengthening the Modern Slavery Partnership work, and there's, with Essex County Council, we'll be implementing the Families First Partnership and maintaining the CSP funding sustainability because of the budget restrictions and reductions that are coming from PFCC and other areas. And you'll be glad to know, sir, that is the end of the slideshow.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I mean, it's been a really, really good report to read. I was delighted to see, and no doubt Mr. Greaves, you were as well, the statistics on shoplifting, a real concerted team effort in getting that down, because I think this time last year we knew in this place and out there just how aggrieved some of our small entrepreneurs were, as well as the big businesses that were being impacted by what seemed like really, really high levels of shoplifting. So well done on that front, and well done also to the police, because you've got the highest satisfaction rate in Essex from the customers at 80%. So that is really good news, and can give us some comfort in Colchester that you are doing good work. If I may have a first bite of the cherry before I open it up, though, because obviously you've referenced tonight the sad and tragic statistics around sexual violence and rape, in fact, being highest in Colchester and comparable Thurrock, Southend, Basildon and Chelmsford, I think, which is obviously worrying. And I think we owe it to the public to get beneath that and find out what might be going on. And I'm going to ask the obvious question, with no malice intended, but I must ask the question. Good evening, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Rowe, we've just had the presentation. We're now beginning the questioning around what's happened in the last year and therefore how we will determine what will go forward in the following year. Probably my question, if you don't mind, Chief Inspector Sparks, is to you, because within the report it says here that Essex Police are working in partnership with the City Council and other partners to develop a training programme for our Wethersfield visitors, including, I'm going to quote so that no one can misinterpret what I'm saying, but it says here, in partnership with the City Council and Rama, we are developing a specialist training programme for migrants covering violence against women and girls, sexual offences and consent. So the obvious question I'm afraid I must ask you is there a correlation between the spike in numbers in Colchester and the visitors in Wethersfield?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Laws. I'm very happy to sit here and say there is absolutely no correlation whatsoever. One of the reasons why we have seen an increase in other sexual offences is because of legislative change that's happened within the last year, particularly in relation to online sexual offences. There's been some changes in relation to that. So having looked at the data, particularly in relation to demographic of individuals that are perpetrating those crimes, I'm happy to say that there is absolutely no correlation whatsoever between the increase in those crimes and our residents that are residing in Wethersfield at the moment. The training programme is absolutely in there. It's for reassurance and making sure that individuals that are currently housed within our country are able to understand what our laws are, what our tolerance levels are, and it's important that they do understand our processes in relation to violence against women and girls, consent and so on and so forth. But that's a reassurance programme to ensure that actually those individuals know what they are. But I'm very happy to sit here and say that there's absolutely no correlation whatsoever between those individuals and the increase that we see in Colchester at this moment in time. And I think another narrative which we have covered in previous years is those increases in relation to rape particularly, and again I reflect on the fact that there is no correlation. However, we've discussed it previously that an increase isn't necessarily a bad thing in certain spheres, because actually that is what we've already referred to as that increase in confidence in policing to be able to report. Many individuals don't. Many individuals are frightened of the criminal justice process and don't feel confident in coming forward for lots of different reasons. And whilst it is not a very comfortable statistic, I think it's fair to say that if we've got an increase in confidence in policing, we may well see an increase in some of that reporting. And I'm quite comfortable to a certain degree. It's not nice to have to sit here and say that, but actually I'm sure my colleagues will say that actually an increase is not necessarily a reflection on more crime, it's a reflection on more confidence in policing.
Can I also suggest that due to the amount of education and awareness that is being given to younger people within schools, we're actually making potential victims more aware of the support and availability to them, so they may, not just in confidence to the police, but actually knowledge and understanding of what is an offence, so that people who may have been within a controlling coercive relationship who didn't realise they were in such a sphere have now been educated, that allows them to recognise the crime, report the crime, and therefore that may also lead to an increase.
Okay, thank you for the reassurance. I think that is helpful given some of the public discourse around this area in the generality. I think Councillor Rippingale probably on that point, and then I see Natalie, then Mr Willis.
Thank you. I obviously have a special interest in this because I've been leading some work in the Parliamentary Office around VAUG. It'd be really useful to understand the referrals to Next Chapter and CARA continue to rise, whilst police recorded domestic abuse incidents has fallen. How is this CSP interpreting this mismatch, and is further investment needed in victim services? Also, how are we measuring the change in perpetrator behaviour now we're delivering programmes? And what additional learning resources have we got from the Pathfinder programme, and how will these be embedded locally? And then I've just had another question for. Obviously, Council passed a domestic violence covenant in December. What work is being done in the partnership to understand how those principles in the covenant can be embedded in the work that you do? Thank you.
Who fancies that?
I was going to do my Taylor Swift and shake it off. I will go to Bev in a short while. Thank you for the questions. So I've sat here for a number of years, as has Bev, and we are fully aware that there is a difference between the statistics that are reported to the police and the crimes that may drop, and Beverly will tell us that they are getting increased numbers coming to them. Without stepping on people's toes and remembering from previous years, a lot of survivors and victims do not wish to go to the police to relive the crime. So what I'm going to do is allow Bev to explain that, or Ma'am, because you do a much better job than me.
I mean, this is a well-rehearsed discussion that we've had over the years, and I'm not sure that it's one that will change, because the services that we provide are absolutely choice-based. So we work to the outcome that the person wants to achieve, and quite often they don't want to go through the criminal justice system. It's not necessarily a lack of trust of the police or a poor impression of what the police may do. It's simply the fact that actually they're safe, they want to focus on their recovery, and actually they want to be safe and get on with the rest of their life rather than constantly looking back. I think we need to understand the impact of the criminal justice system, i.e. the court system, on our ability to hold people in the space where they are supporting a prosecution or action that the police may want to take. I mean, we really want people to work with the police. We really want perpetrators held to account, particularly when you have nominals who have, 5, 6, 7 victims, and we are constantly picking up the pieces of wrecked lives as a result of an individual's behaviour. So we absolutely want to support people, but when they are safe and their children are safe and they're starting their recovery and they're told that their court date is 18 months or 2 years away, it's really, really difficult for somebody to hold themselves in that, I suppose, that limbo where they can't truly recover, they can't truly move on, because they know that this is coming up, and this the court date, the reliving, the going through everything is coming up. So we work in partnership, we work brilliantly together, we do everything that we possibly can to support people to come to the police, but we work on a needs basis and are driven by the people who come to us for support. So there is always going to be a difference, but we recognise that and we work together around that, and we are really lucky that we work in partnership, that we are brought inside of police processes, so not only so that we are partners in information sharing and case management, but also in terms of holding the police to account. So we sit in rooms watching body-worn camera footage, so we can talk about trauma-informed responses, so that we can make sure that the police officers who attend on the ground and the uniform response is absolutely everything that it needs to be, so that when that person reaches out and have an incident, the response they get from the police is the best possible thing that they can get to encourage them to continue that relationship with the police around a criminal justice outcome, as well as a personal recovery outcome alongside Next Chapter. You asked quickly about funding and victim services funding, and we are really lucky that we are well supported with a commission provider. So Essex County Council put an awful lot of budget into domestic abuse. Is it enough? No. Our practitioners are right at the very top end of the safe caseloads that they can hold. So they're holding 35 to 45 cases each. They should be holding 28 to 30. So we're already over the top of that. And every month we see more and more people coming in and seeking support, which is absolutely the right thing. We don't want to stop that tide. It absolutely is the right thing, and that's not because there are more people experiencing domestic abuse. It's just that actually, you know, we're managing to shine a light in those dark corners, and people are feeling more confident about saying, actually, it's not my fault, I need some support. But the worst thing would be if we didn't have enough people, practitioners around to be able to respond adequately to those people who are still coming out. So anyway, that's my two penneth. I'm going to hand over to
Thank you. There were lots of complex questions in there, Kaylee, so
Yeah.
I shall try and cover as much as I can with basically an overview of where Essex Police is in terms of its domestic abuse and what does 2026 hold for Essex Police, because I think that will probably start to answer some of those questions for you. So you may well have seen we are under a relatively big restructure within Essex Police at this moment in time, and one of the big reasons behind that is to ensure that we can put the right resources, the right people, the right technology into domestic abuse teams. And where they currently sit in local policing, they're moving over to the Specialist Command, which is Crime and Public Protection. So they're going to move across, and what they're doing in that is taking a whole load of staff and additional staff in there. So that's the umbrella. It's a lot more complex than that, to be entirely honest with you, but that's what's happening. It's in the process of happening. Will happen over the course of 2026. The investment into our domestic violence investigation teams is exactly the right thing for us to do in order to support vulnerable people across Essex and within the Colchester district, is to ensure that we're getting the right response to those individuals. So when it does become a police investigation, we are able to support them properly, being trauma informed, that we are able to ensure that we're getting cases in front of the judiciary as soon as we possibly can. That is a big barrier for a lot of individuals. We're working in our technology space in order to ensure that we can put case files together as quickly as possible. They're often very lengthy and long. They take a lot of time to develop, and actually we're developing technology to enable us to do that quicker, better, and we're working with the Crown Prosecution Service in order to do that. In fact, the DATE team, the Domestic Abuse Investigation team here in Colchester, is leading on that nationally. They're a national pathfinder in order to be able to do that. So we are doing the development of our DATE teams into Crime and Public Protection. We're looking at case files, and we're being a demanding customer of the criminal justice system, I think, is probably the best thing for us to say. We all are aware that we are still talking about court backlogs, but that's why we're doing this work with the Crown Prosecution Service, to try to ensure that we can get positive outcomes for individuals that have got the faith in criminal police, that we can get those for those individuals, so they can move on in their lives, to be able to put the past behind them and not relive that trauma. We've already talked about early intervention and education. We want to also talk about increasing the use of domestic violence disclosure schemes in order to be able to ensure that individuals do know that they are in relationship with those people that may well have a history of that sort of offending. So lots of things that are happening, and strengthening the DATE teams within the whole of Essex and within Colchester is where we're going for 2026. And I'm very confident that continuing to work in this sphere with our partners will be able to have a positive outcome in the future.
Thank you.
The question about the perpetrator behaviour. There's been a lot about victim survivors, so it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on perpetrators.
There is actually a new partner agency to the CSP, Cranston, who are specifically working with perpetrators to divert, educate and prevent. So obviously that those who fall within the criteria, and obviously as a CSP, as a council or as a police, we don't control the various CSP how they deliver the work, but it is something that when you looked at our areas of focus a couple of years ago, we spoke very much about the victims and survivors. And then now, obviously over the last couple of years, we recognise that actually if you can deal with perpetrators and then work with on prevention, then hopefully we will have less victims and survivors. So there is actually partners that are working specifically with the perpetrators. Obviously the probation service will be involved, rehabilitation organisations. With regards to the Pathfinder and the DA Covenant, neither myself or Sam actually have been given details of these. We're not aware of them internally. So I'm not going to hide away and say I knew nothing about it. But please.
Use the microphone, apologies. So I'm not sure, we did also talk about, give an update on progress on Covenant at one of recent cabinet meetings I've been to in quite quick succession. So I've got details and I wonder if it's easier if I share those with you offline. I can update you on, there's quite a lot of information there. But obviously, CBH and other partners are part of the CSP and attend the Community Safety Delivery Board meetings and other meetings. So as DA is one of the focus areas, you know, that work will be, you know, implemented and will be, you know, carried out. So I can assure you that we are working on that. And as I say, I can share more detailed update with you.
Thank you for that. Okay, I've got Councillor Summers, Willits and Osborne in that order, please, and then Councillor Rowe, number 4.
But another thing that's been concerning me lately has been the rise in covert filming of young women enjoying an evening out and using the footage on putting it on YouTube for exploitative purposes to raise money. And we know there's been a change in the law on upskirting thanks to Aware Hob House. And there's talk around what we can actually do to sort of, you know, prevent this type of exploitative filming. So what advice would you give young people, particularly young women, on an evening out in Colchester and its surrounding areas who feel they are being covertly filmed? Because obviously we know once this stuff gets out on the internet, it's there forever. And this can lead to harassment of individuals who are filmed. And obviously we know the online harassment itself will be illegal, but obviously it's been caused by these exploitative videos. So if someone does feel that they're being filmed in such a way on a night out in Colchester, what would you advise them to, what actions would you advise them to take?
So first of all, I think from a whole CSP perspective, education is the first place where we would need to go about the perpetrators and also about the victims in relation to that. If individuals are feeling that they are being covertly filmed within Colchester, they can go to trusted sources, and we have got Pub Watch and other bits and pieces that would happily support us in those environments, and I'll refer to Vinny in that very shortly. If they are feeling that they have been harassed, we have got powers that you've rightly pointed out, report those to police, and we'll investigate as best as we possibly can based on the information that I was able to be shared with us in the circumstances. Vinny, is there anything you want to add?
I think what's important as well is through the Ask for Angela campaign, those who have received training don't always just focus on potentially the vulnerable, they're also looking out for potential perpetrators as well. So that includes the glass collector, to the management, to also the security teams. So I would encourage anyone, if they're starting to feel uncomfortable in that situation, a code word as simple as Ask for Angela, get staff involved, or if you feel confident to go and literally tell them what's happened, please go and see security, please go and see staff. They are trained to assist you.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, Councillor Willits.
Chairman, just picking up on things in probably the reverse order I was going to speak on them. The matter of our recent resolution, or the Council's recent resolution on domestic abuse, I'm surprised that it has not been formally notified to the partnership. I would have thought when the Council takes a decision on matters such as that, there should be a formal process for informing the partnership of our view as one of the senior members of the partnership. Therefore, I'm very surprised to hear that the news of the Council's deliberation and its resolutions in these very difficult areas has not reached the partnership. And I think we should have a recommendation to ensure that process is put in place to ensure that this happens in the future. We can't put our own house in order, and we can't really expect all the other partners of the partnership to work in a similar constructive manner.
Councillor Williams, can I just pause your energy just there for a second, because Mr Tyrrell might be able to assist on this specific item.
Yes, so as Councillor Law has already alluded to, there was a discussion on this at Cabinet and a report back. I've actually got that on my device, and I think her recommendation is very long because there is a lot of work, so it's best to circulate it to councillors afterwards is best. But just to pick up, it's a covenant on domestic abuse in housing, and CBH are leading on it. There is a massive amount of work that's been done. The report starts with a what's already in place, and actually that's most of the stuff that the Community Safety Partnership's already done, so it doesn't necessarily need to involve those partners, because this is about what extra can be done specifically in the housing front. But we have, for example, some of the recommendations on domestic abuse champions. We have those across the council already embedded. We've had those for many years, so that's one example of where we've already picked up some of that. Safeguarding leads, various networks for that, and those were some of the things that were in that motion. But the work that's being done now is within CBH. How is that then stretched across the social housing network? And so it's actually a motion that's been picked up by Councillor Young under her housing portfolio, but obviously with close links with us. So that would explain why the CSP has not been directly involved in that work, but I can confirm that members of that partnership have been involved where they needed to be involved, if that makes sense.
Councillor Law, you look like you're itching to intervene, but keep that energy, Councillor Willits, because we've got to come back to you.
Be very brief. Also, the last Community Safety Delivery Board, probably in terms of the agenda and meetings, it's sort of, given the timing of the motion, that wasn't able to be included on that. The next CSDB will be in April, so I'm happy to ensure that we can have an update, you know, just to inform wider system partners about that work going on then.
Yeah, I mean, our responsibility this evening is to scrutinise the work of the partnership, not the council. And as such, I think we're sort of in a neutralist position, and it may well be that we're doing lots of work, but we want to see that it is properly communicated to the partnership, so that all members of the partnership have an understanding of what the council is doing and can act accordingly and draw on the advice, the work that the council has done. And it just seemed to me that there seemed to be a looming gap there, and the opportunity to step in quickly and advise all the partners on some very interesting work being done by the council had not been taken. But if I misunderstood the position, I certainly apologise. The next point I would just like to address is the issue that the chairman brought up, the training that is being done in regard to respect for women and so on for people coming into the country. This really, to me, seems to be a culture issue, which has sort of wider dimensions than just explaining to some people who've come to our country the way we operate. When I go abroad, in my previous job, I used to go to Dubai quite often and Saudi Arabia. I was very aware that I was going to a place which had a different culture. And there were things which you can do in the UK, which would be very unadvisable to do in public in other countries. And it would seem that this awareness, which I hope we have in the UK for the extent to which our culture is ours, but is not necessarily shared with cultures in other countries, somehow needs to be extended so that when people visit us here, they recognise, just as we have to recognise, that there are things which can be done and cannot be done. I think we should provide every support and effort to those who are sympathetically trying to explain how UK culture differs from the culture of many other countries. it's being addressed in a very narrow concept of certain visitors who might be at Wethersfield. But it sounds like a sort of issue where when you look through the list of people to whom we syndicate the reports from the community partnership, there perhaps should be sort of wider discussion and briefing on the need for respect for alternative cultures rather than just in the very narrow area of possible sexual crimes by people coming in as residents at Wethersfield.
Could you elaborate on that, Councillor Willetts? Because I'm not disagreeing with you, but in practical terms, because obviously this report here references a specific set of individuals who, as of March, going to be given some specific training and awareness, which all sounds to be very sensible and reassuring and proactive. But Councillor Willetts, you're talking about a wider proposition of ensuring that we have cultural understanding of how we do things in this country. How can we be practical?
I just wonder whether the partnership is in a position to perhaps widen the view of the training that it's given to encompass not just a potential area of crime, although I suspect the money behind this training is coming from that particular source, but from the point of view of an interaction of cultures, wherever we have large numbers of people coming into the city or the area with a different cultural perspective, there needs to be that sort of approach on an automatic basis, but also on a wider basis, a wider range of issues which are really necessary for people, visitors, to understand, so that they can live in the UK without finding themselves in difficulties because there are issues that they don't fully understand because of their cultural background.
Paul, I wonder if Samantha or Paul can help us out here.
We're discussing it as, strangely enough, as partners. Obviously, our area of focus 4 is about inclusivity, and therefore we do work with partners who deal with the immigrant, refugee people who attend the country. I think when you look at it, it's very much, we teach British values within schools, so children who attend schools are learning British values. So if they're coming from foreign countries, they will learn British values. The people who come in, they're older and are within Wethersfield and other locations. You're talking about almost like a national education, to actually say, you're coming to Britain, these are the standards we have. I'm not entirely sure that a Colchester-based CSP would be able to tackle the problem. What we can obviously do is speak to our partners, such as Rama and places like that, and actually say to them, what do you deliver to the attendees? What works? What would you like to see if partners can assist you with things? And reach out to those organisations. I think it's a very broad area. Obviously, a lot of what we see in the media is because a certain group of people with different values, men in particular, are committing sexual offences, and they may not see that as the serious offence it is, because culturally, differently, they see women in a different way. I'm not entirely sure, and that is part of the training that's being delivered at Wethersfield. I know it's localised to Wethersfield, but those Wethersfield service users are coming into Colchester and other areas here. So if they're educated and they understand that that is a bonus. But we have no problem looking at what can be delivered, but what we also need to make sure is that it's deliverable and is going to have a result. So I think the best thing we can do is we can reach out to those who are experts in their field. It's what we do with DA, it's what we do with other, so we'll speak to the experts, and community groups, our own internal community teams, and actually say, with regards to what's been raised with us, what do you think will work or assist? And then obviously we can come back and report back on that.
Glad to hear that. I would never, though, have talked about it in terms of standards of behaviour, because it's a difference in culture. We have different culture to other countries, and it's not a case, there is no absolute standard. There's the need to understand that things are done differently in this country. Whether that's right or wrong compared with their own culture or culture that they might be migrating towards is a rather sensitive matter. But it's not a standard, it's the fact that we do things differently, and that difference has to be respected, and I was just seeking the extent to which that sort of training can be delivered. But you say it's in a national context, so I guess there isn't money to consider that.
I obviously can't speak for nationally, and money is very, very tight everywhere in all areas. And sorry, if the term of standard, obviously you say a cultural outlook on the status of women may be different across the board, but obviously, as we all agree, you know, we talk about British values, and if you're in the United Kingdom, there are values that should be, and people should be given the respect and the safety that it deserves. So apologies for the word standard, and I understand it's culturally awkward, so if anybody is listening and offended, I apologise.
Next point, Chairman, is the good old one on reporting of domestic abuse issues, which we've discussed on many occasions, and still is not satisfactory to my point of view. Although I wouldn't have brought it up had it not arisen in the natural course of the flow of the meeting. Our purview is crime and disorder. Unfortunately, we don't have much disorder in Colchester, so we're concentrating mainly on crime. But there is no, as I understand it, Chairman, there is no legal requirement, other than one or two specific areas, to report crime to the police. And in fact, the police are not obliged to investigate crime. It's at their discretion whether they investigate any particular crime. And it's also true that quite often, in regard to crimes, not just domestic violence, but a much wider range of crimes, there is a degree of unpleasantness about having to report it, you know, rat on your neighbours or so on, or explain how you got yourself into a rather difficult position, and you really prefer, you want something to be done, but you don't want to explain to the police what happened and how it happened, and perhaps the embarrassment that might go with it. But if that philosophy of crime reporting or not reporting crime is to extend, it would seem to make the police's job very difficult, given that the reports and intelligence on crime is the bread and butter of bringing criminals to justice, and that we need a system, not just in domestic abuse situations, but a variety of them where it is seen as the norm to report crime, even if it is distasteful or distressing, or facts might come out that one doesn't want to be brought forward. There is no obligation, but perhaps there should be an obligation to have to report crime, rather than decide whether it's just too uncomfortable to do it in many cases, as is the situation we've had explained to us in regard to domestic abuse. So I just wonder what the view is on how we go about encouraging people in a sort of wide range of crimes to come forward and report crime, because that is the society only benefits if that happens, when it is uncomfortable, it is difficult sometimes to do it, and we see certain areas such as domestic abuse where there is almost positive encouragement not to report a crime if it's going to cause stress to the family. So where do we draw the line? What can we do to ensure that we have maximum reporting of crime so that its effect and impact on society can be minimised?
Chief Inspector.
Thank you for the question. I think, if I may summarise slightly your do correct me if I'm wrong, this is around society's obligation to report crime and what can we do to encourage reporting of crime. Is that a fair assessment, a summary? So you're absolutely right, there isn't an obligation to report crime to policing. However, reporting does happen, and there's lots of different ways in which reporting of crime can happen in police. We've already referred to some of those over the course of this evening, whether it be Crime Stoppers, whether it be directly in through a third party, directly to policing, or through the CSP more widely. So that's about education. That's about us making sure that people understand that crime has taken place in the first place, and that actually we often see that that isn't necessarily the case with some crimes, particularly when it's in the domestic field. So there's a piece around education that we're all on this table responsible for, saying a crime has happened, you are a victim, you are vulnerable, making sure individuals are aware of that in the first instance. You also mentioned the fact that we've got discretion not to investigate. Whilst that may well be the case for some very, very low-level crime, we don't tend to take that viewpoint as policing. Our job is absolutely to investigate crime, and that's exactly what our statutory obligations are to do. So we wouldn't necessarily walk away from those responsibilities that we've got to society as a whole. You talked about how society benefits from reporting, and yes, we're going to be encouraging that through all of those people that are around the table today, through the CSP, through our councillors, through the individuals like yourself that are holding us to scrutiny, that actually you have to have the confidence in policing in order to be able to do that. We can do that through media campaigns, we can do that through online, but the best way of us doing that is by having some really positive conversations in relation to our partners here at the table, you as councillors talking to your residents. I've gone out on a number of occasions with the people that are around the table today to say, actually, I really, really would like you to come forward and report. You're absolutely right. I need the information, I need the intelligence to be the best that I possibly can be to ensure that my resources are in the right place to deal with those crimes. I can't do that without the support of the public. We take ourselves all the way back to Peelian principles. We absolutely need the public to be on our side in order to be able to be the best that we possibly can be. And it's in this environment, and it's sharing this more widely to say absolutely have confidence in police. Let us take this information forward. Let's get better at communication that we talked about earlier on today to feed that information back so people know that we are doing positive things. We've got a huge amount of engagement that goes on across the whole of Essex Police, but particularly here in Colchester. I've got a fantastic community engagement support officer that does a huge amount of work to put all of those positive messages out. Those outcomes are really out there in terms of media, whether they're in newspapers or online, sharing those positive stories to say, do you know what, we can get it right. Sometimes things don't go exactly as we might like them to be, but there's often a good rationale behind that, and just sharing that and being open and transparent about those stories to encourage people to come forward. We want people to have confidence in policing. We want people to feel that they are obliged to report because they know that they're going to get those positive outcomes. So lots of work that can be done across the field, lots of work that's already been done across the whole of the partnership here, and all those other people that are in the room at the moment. We are getting there. We just need to keep on pushing it, having those really positive communications with the people of Colchester.
Ms Jones.
Do you mind if I just come back on the DA part? We parry over this every meeting, Councillor Willits, and I understand your difficulty that you have with the difference between the numbers of people that come through to support services as victims of domestic abuse and those numbers of people who will come through to the police for criminal justice outcomes alongside that. I just wanted to give you some numbers just to try and perhaps reassure you that we don't actively discourage people from reporting to us and not going to the police. So if you think in broad terms, 30% of our referrals will come from a range of other professional referrals from GP schools, social care, all of that type of thing. 30% will come from self-referrals and 30% of our referrals will come through the police. The numbers that I have is that 65% of the people that we support through criminal justice procedures and reporting to the police. So just simply those numbers tell you that we get a third of our numbers from the police, and another third of our numbers we support to go to the police. So we actively support people to seek that criminal justice outcome, not because it's just good for them, but it's good for society in general, to get a perpetrator dealt with and off the streets for future victims as well. So we do our bit. We support people. There will be a proportion of people where perhaps their experience is so historic that actually the value of their evidence perhaps is that they're not going to get a successful outcome. It doesn't mean that they haven't experienced a crime, but if their crime was 10 or 15 years ago and they're still living with the impacts of that, we absolutely will support them with that. Will we encourage them to try and put themselves through a criminal justice procedure? Probably not, if they just want to get over it and get on with the rest of their lives and reclaim and get rid of the impact for themselves. But I just wanted to reassure you from those numbers that actually we do take our position really seriously in terms of working in partnership with the police.
Councillor Willis, you happy?
Yeah.
We're going to move on. Very patient. Thank you, Councillor Osborne, and then it's Councillor Rowe. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all. I have 4 questions in total. Shall I do them one by one or all together? One by one. Okay. So is the People Safe app that was advertised in 2024 still being advertised? And is it being promoted to the wider public community, specifically our residents? If it's not being promoted, can it be? If not, what are the reasons preventing its promotion?
People Safe app. Vincent.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The People Safe is part of the Business Improvement District campaign for a safe and welcoming city. It is not widely available for the wider community. It is for our business levy payers only. Yes, it is still being advertised. It is due for a review in October. Literally off the top of my head, we bought licenses up to about 300, so 300 people could have the app. We're about a capacity of 50 with the highest rate, and this has been over a 3-year period of about 65% people taking up on it. We have a churn rate as well, because obviously we target a lot of our university students as well to take it on board. But we do have a bit of a caveat that when obviously they go back, we'll make it available for someone else to take on the, when I say license, the application of it. Yes, it is advertised to all our bid levy businesses. Just like everything that you're hearing here, we have to give information to management and ask them to cascade it, and then my fantastic ambassadors will go out and remind people on how to do it. And it's a very, very simple process. It will be reviewed in October when the contract comes to a bit of a closure. We will look at alternatives as well as part of our procurement process. Most common ones available that are similar are Hollyguard, WalkSafe, so it's something that we will renew.
Thank you. Who is responsible for determining the membership of the Colchester Community Partnership? And does that current partnership include representation from residents or individuals with lived experience? If not, can such representation be incorporated?
There are obviously statutory partners, who I'm stuck with. And then there are non-statutory partners who stay as long as they don't upset me. No, that's joking aside. So as non-statutory partners are those who, as organisations, will contribute to the CSP. Historically, a number of CSPs will have had people who, or organisations who were part of a CSP because they just wanted to find out what was going on and weren't actually providing service to the community. So there was a sort of a weaning out of that across the board. CSPs are obviously under scrutiny, being focused on make sure that we are fit for purpose. With regards to residents groups, obviously it's almost like organisations that can serve all of Colchester across the board rather than sort of small groups. However, obviously a lot of the organisations on the CSP are approached by the residents or the people they serve, so a resident's voice is heard through them.
Thank you. This report lists multiple support organisations and referral routes, but doesn't explain what happens to residents who are assessed as not meeting criteria. How many people fall into this gap, and how is unmet need monitored or escalated back to the council?
Sorry,
The report lists multiple support organisations and referral routes, but perhaps doesn't explain what happens to residents who are assessed as not meeting criteria, as in not appropriate for that particular service, for whatever reason. How many people do they fall into this gap of the unmet need, and how is unmet need monitored or escalated back to the council?
so just to clarify, is this in relation to the housing side of things? Because obviously we got other team members. Because a lot of people who are applying to whichever group might be seeking assistance on a certain area. So obviously it would have to be what specific area you're talking about, because I could then get you an answer from that particular group.
I guess I'm talking about on a general scale, I mean, of everything.
Okay. I suppose the bottom line is each organisation within the CSP obviously need to assess the individual applicant, whether it's somebody who may be referred for safeguarding, somebody referred under prevent, somebody who requires housing, etc. As a CS, that would fall to the individual. The CSP, as a chair and as a group, we have this overview, but we're unable to dive directly into each other's business all the time because we just get swamped and never achieve. What I would say is that those who don't meet the criteria, unfortunately, don't meet the criteria set by whatever service they are seeking. We know there are shortfalls in adult social care, child social care, housing. We know the shortfalls. And we're obviously looking at crime and disorder panel, and so, regards it, a lot of what the CSP partners are dealing with wouldn't necessarily be under crime and disorder, but would be their other business sections and areas. But unfortunately, I think finances and availability of properties, availability of support services will always limit those who get the service they are seeking. And unfortunately, I think that currently is the way of the whole, across the United Kingdom. But what I can do is I'll look into a specific and see if I can come up with some examples for you of if there are catchments or catching systems that can pick up those who don't reach the criteria at the top.
It's a really interesting point, because there are probably lots of people who fall through the gaps who are undiagnosed with maybe early dementia, low-level mental health challenges, maybe hoarders, for example, who could be vulnerable to basically being exploited. So I think holistically, the point you're getting at is really, really interesting. And it's probably a good thing that we have such proactive team in Colchester Borough Homes who don't just look at antisocial behaviour because you're playing music too loud, but other levels. Yes.
I was just going to pick up on that very point. So, for example, our frontline staff are all trained to identify things that are outside of their areas of expertise. So, for example, if I take food safety officers as an example, they will go into premises where they might meet people that are at risk of exploitation and modern slavery, or various other issues, drugs, overcrowded housing conditions that aren't satisfactory. So they're trained to a degree to keep their eyes open for things that they don't necessarily need to know how to deal with, but they need to know how to spot the signs of it so that they can then signpost and make those referrals to other council services or other agencies that can. So we do a lot of stuff like that. The CSP itself, the strength of the partnership is in that prevention space. But as Paul mentioned, each organisation will have their own referral system. So, for example, we have the local government ombudsman, police have ombudsman, housing ombudsman, and if they don't have the ombudsman, they'll have some sort of referral process so that each organisation accounts for itself and they'll have some sort of governance system in place. But the work that we do, things like the Frontline app is a practical example that's been introduced this year, where we're trying to make it as easy as possible, that whatever it is that you need support with, and however much knowledge you've got about the support that's available and out there, you can find that help from one place and make it as simple as possible We've done the same thing with the CSP website, for example, where you can go in by partner if you know what you're looking for, and if you don't, you can go in by the type of help or the type of issue that you're facing, and then it will link you to those partners that specialise in those areas. So it doesn't matter how you've entered the system, you enter in the right place. And then there are also some operational groups that meet on specific cases to look at perhaps better known customers as well. Now that's whether they're perpetrators or you need a support to make sure that those places are linked, and safeguarding training, for example, is another area where you would make sure that everything that has been done can be done. ASB case triggers, or the old community triggers, now ASB case reviews, that's where we can call in all partners that have been involved in something and make sure that they've done as much as they possibly can, and you get that external review. So there's a whole network of mechanisms to make sure that that space is covered, if that's any assurance.
Councillor Osborne, you've got one more, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, no, thank you. Given the number of agencies, this is going to be tricky because of GDPR, but given the number of agencies involved, what steps are being taken to improve cross-organisation communication? For example, shared case protocols, joint triage, regular cross-sector panels, so that no resident is passed around or lost between services.
Councillor Rowe, I'm coming to you next.
So the CSP isn't case management organisation, but there are, so yes, we are the strategic overview. However, within roles that I have, Sam, Chief Inspector Sparks, we have all, like, there are organisations, MACE 2, etc., where individual cases are picked up. There are lots of cross-border, cross-organisational working on specific cases, known individuals, etc., that don't fall under the CSP, but remain part of my purview and individual purviews. So the CSP has a strategic umbrella, but not individual case management.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rowe and then Councillor Rippingale, if it's still relevant. I've got you on my list.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to apologise for my tardiness. Unfortunately, a bit of a childcare issue on my side, which meant that I missed the presentation. I'd like to apologise to the panel. Very sorry that I missed the presentation, and if this has already been covered in the presentation, please stop me and let me know, but I'm not sure it has. So from my perspective, I get sort of a number of things about this on a regular basis. I get questions on this, and it's sort of going back to what Councillor Willits and Councillor Laws spoke about at the beginning with regards to the Wethersfield and the areas of partnership and delivery around training and awareness programs that we have. Now, I think it seems from the documentations that we've read that we go into quite a lot of detail around, you know, sort of partnerships, what we're doing, the outcomes, etc. What I don't see is the cost that it has, to, and particularly to Colchester, and particularly to Colchester. And I understand, well, I suppose from my perspective, a lot of these are national issues. So as we're working with, you know, across organisations, sometimes across boundaries, you know, I'm assuming that we're, you know, partnering with many different organisations across the board to deliver these services. How do we make sure that we acquire the funding that we that we need? And I'm assuming that comes from central government. And if it doesn't, then what is ultimately costing Colchester and Colchester or Essex taxpayers, whoever ends up picking up the bill? And from that side of things, given the money that we're spending, either nationally or locally, what are the outcomes that we're getting? Because as I say, we talk about the partnership, we talk about all the really good things that we're trying to do, but I don't understand how we measure the spend that we put on this, what we're spending and versus what is the outcome, and ultimately, are we getting a good outcome for the money that we're spending? So I suppose I could summarise it a bit easier. Are we getting outcome for the money that we're spending, and is the Colchester taxpayer picking it up either through Essex or through Colchester, or are they picking it up through national government? Thank you.
Sorry, we've just got some messages coming in because we have partners on board who will have a direct intro.
Thank you. It's an interesting question, though, isn't it? Because if Colchester is supporting a particular collection of individuals, whatever that collection be, in whatever context, are we working within existing resources to manage that, or are we getting some sort of bonus money to deal with it?
Correct.
That's what you're getting at.
Correct, and it also sort of then widens the discussion around where those particular individuals are kept and looked after.
So there's two sort of strands. So I'll deal with the CSP side of things, and then my colleague Michelle Tarbin will come in and discuss funding for specific area. So the CSP, we are funded by the PFCC as a single block to start with, to deal with the CSP activities. Then there is the opportunity for partners and the CSP to bid for funding relevant to the activity they wish to challenge.
Sorry, can you just take it back a step? So who is the CSP? As in, like, who
Sorry.
funds? How does it get funded? As in, like, I don't understand what you
So
mean.
the Colchester Safety
Yeah.
Partnership,
Yeah.
i.e. us,
Yeah.
we get our initial fund from the PFCC. So the national government give PFCC money and give it to the various CSPs in Essex. Then there are various pots of money, which I will state are shrinking, for organisations or the CSP to bid for to support specific activities. So, for argument's sake, in fact, within the report, it will say that we've recovered a certain amount of money for a DA, resource resettlement officer, and that's explained where we get those funds from. With regards to the specific question, potentially of those outside people who are coming in, I will defer to Michelle Tarbin, if she could be let in, or if she can hop in.
While we're waiting for that connection with Michelle, just to point out, folks, it's fast approaching 7:30, and I will call a comfort break around 7:30. But Michelle, if you can hear us, we're looking forward to hearing you. And I think our officers are just arranging that now. I'm filling airtime. I mean, it's significantly.
Can you hear me
better
at all?
this evening than last time we met. Yes, we can hear you, Michelle. Let's go for it.
Sorry, so that sounded like it came through really loud. Just on the funding point, we get considerable funding from the Home Office for all the resettlement schemes. So I can absolutely confirm that all the support we give to either asylum seekers, Ukrainian families, the Afghan families, is all funded by the Home Office. And that includes our staff. I've got 2 members of staff who solely work in resettlement who are completely funded by Home Office funds. So it doesn't come out of council funds. It sits under Councillor King's portfolio, and he signs off any spend, be that for essential things or things like English language courses or funding of caseworkers at Rama, whatever it happens to be. But we are very blessed that we do get considerable funding from the Home Office for those schemes. What I would say in relation to Wethersfield is Braintree District Council obviously get funding as well, and they're responsible for Wethersfield. So we are unable to spend Colchester funding on Wethersfield because it's not in our boundary. So we work closely with Braintree in partnership to try to alleviate any of the issues and stresses we get from that transportation. So I suppose in summary, we don't have a lot of control at all about who comes in, via what schemes, who Colchester, where they are. We have very little control over that, but we do get money to support us, support them. Hopefully that helps, Chair.
I think so, but I think I'm going to ask the question that might be going on in people's minds, which is that we proactively welcome the the visitors from Eversfield into central Colchester via community-funded transport. So I think we are culpable for welcoming those individuals here. And if you're saying that Braintree are only dealing with the funding, we can't deal with it, that feels a little sticky, if I'm honest.
We have no control over those buses. We do not commission the buses. We have objected to the buses. The government have funded those buses. Councillor King has had direct conversations with the Home Office in relation to Wethersfield buses. Unfortunately, we have no control over that whatsoever, however much I would like to.
Okay, that's useful. That's excellent. Thank you. So then,
Councillor Rowe, can I say that we might need a break now because it is 7:30.
Yeah.
I did have 3 Dr. Peppers before I came in here, so I need a break. There is a witness to this, but if we can take a comfort break now, that'd be useful and appropriate for everyone, because I know you've got more questions, and that's great. So I wouldn't want to be speeding you up because I need to go to the toilet. So let's go and take our comfort breaks and be back here around 7:45, please.
probably knows the right tools for the job.
Okay, folks, welcome back, welcome back. I think we're streaming live again for part 2, having had a comfort break. Great, okay, we're there. So we were in the middle of hearing some questions from Councillor Rowe. I've got Councillor Rippingale wishing to ask more questions as well. And then I'll perhaps remind people what we're doing here this evening. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. So, I think just before we left, I was asking with regards to, in particular, the services that we provide or that we offer around Wethersfield, which obviously, that we've already agreed, are not necessarily provided by Colchester itself, but there is some potential strain on our local services. And I was, well, I don't want to sort of overstate that, but it was implied that there might be something along those lines, but I think then the bus service was pointed out that it's nothing to do with Colchester, it's to do with Braintree. And my follow-up question was around if we are welcoming these people into Colchester, and in particular Colchester town centre, do we have any idea of the cost or the strain that it puts on our services, and sort of how do we quantify that from our perspective? And secondly, when I was talking about the partnerships that we put in place and the services that we provide, for the cost that we have for these services around education, etc. How do we quantify the quality of the delivery? So sort of, you know, how much money, either whoever it is, whether it's us as the taxpayer in Colchester or us as the taxpayer nationally, we are spending money on these services, and how do we quantify the outcome of these services? So sort of two questions sort of rolled into one there, I think.
I'm sorry if I'm missing the point. I'm not entirely sure how this falls under crime and disorder and the CSP with regards to us preventing crime, because as we were discussing, there's no correlation between the Wethersfield buses and crime for us to challenge. The services we're providing, whoever's providing those, don't fall under the CSP as such. So I'm not entirely sure if I am the right person to comment on this, because within my role I don't deal with it, and well, I deal with certain issues of the Wethersfield buses when it comes to demonstrations and things in the future, but the actual services we're providing to those individuals is not part of what I deal with or what we are dealing with within. And I don't wish to not answer a question I'm asked, but I'm not entirely sure I'm the right person for it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just the fact that the services that we provide are mentioned in the report, and therefore I'm asking, because obviously we're mentioning those in the report, so I'm asking what's the cost of those services and what's the outcome of those services, so that the taxpayer, from a scrutiny perspective, how can the taxpayer justify that those services are worth the money? That's all I'm trying to get at. Thank you.
What I would say is we obviously have Michelle and the team who work for her, Yvonne and Tom Taylor, etc., who would be much better placed to answer those questions individually. So I'll obviously, Michelle's listening, but I'm fairly certain that either you could email me and I'll pass the message on to her to perhaps answer those questions directly, because she is the subject matter expert and I'm not.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm quite happy with the written response as well. That's okay, Chair.
Michelle, do you want to come in here? I think what we had ascertained was that Colchester isn't paying for buses, that's probably a Home Office budget of some sort, which obviously is taxpayer funded, but it's not Colchester per se. Michelle.
Thank you. I think this is probably a separate way, to be honest with you, because we do report on our spend, the categories of spend that we do that David, as leader, actually signs off. So more than happy to bring that to either meeting or do a written response to the questions independently, if that helps. But you're
Michelle,
completely
the leader is here tonight. He's
okay.
happy to come in. David, are you happy to come in? Thank you.
It might help at least clarity of sound. Sorry, Michelle, we're hearing most of you. I will be talking to the Home Office soon because, like everybody who's thoughtful, and that's all of us, and we really care about not only meeting our obligations as a city council with our partners, but ensuring that whatever is done nationally is done as effectively as possible when it comes to how migration, legal or otherwise, is handled. So on the specifics of buses and Wethersfield, this is laid down, unbelievably to me, in legislation. And so the orders that are placed require movements of those who are, for the moment, pre-processing in Wethersfield to go to different regional centres, including Colchester. I intend to ask about that and challenge that, to be honest, and to have whatever control we can around those movements in the interest of everybody. But there's no direct charge or cost. There's no end of people in the Home Office who will no doubt answer questions about that. That's not for us. I shall make sure that we have a local awareness, as best I can with partners, of what is happening, and we treat people appropriately. But the details of how life in Wethersfield is handled, buses, shipments, movements and the cost, are not for us.
And Councillor Rowe, can I jump in on your point around the measurability of success? So, for example, the programme that's rolling out to Wethersfield in March, I mean, one assumes that at the end of that, whatever that looks like, I mean, I do some part-time teaching, so I know that it's very good at the end of a session just to check in with people that they've understood and they've learned. And I'm imagining that that would be built into a programme, but perhaps it would help Councillor Rowe out to know that, you know, it's not just going to be something where you get a leaflet and that's the training. You actually get guidance and the opportunity to declare and show that you've understood what it is you've been taught. Would that help you out, Councillor Rowe, if you could get that clarity?
Yes, I think that would be fantastic. And I think that would probably help the residents who raise these points as well. Thank you.
So if it isn't being done, then there's some feedback there for a way in which we can make sure that folks that don't have English as their first language, for example, and are coming to a culturally different landscape, that they can be encouraged to understand how things are here culturally. Leila, you look poised like you're going to say something. I'll let you say something.
Just to say that I hope and I trust that we're all in the same place on this, that if you have people from different cultures, whilst they're here, it's in everybody's interest, theirs and the host population, to ensure they understand as much as they can the place that they're in at this time, and that they're encouraged to, and we talked about this earlier, encouraged to act with the kind of respect that we would require, and as was said earlier by Dennis, to demonstrate when we're abroad. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe, do you have any more questions for the moment? Okay, thank you. We will move on. Councillor Rippingale, and then it will be Councillor Osborne.
Round two. I'll do it one at a time so it's easier. So we touched on drug dealing previously, and me and Michelle have a lot of contact regarding that. Michelle, it would be really useful for us to understand what the challenges that your officers are actually facing in around drug use and county lines. And particularly, I know we've raised around challenges of housing and holding licence owners to account. So it'd be really useful for us to understand what mechanisms we can support in challenging those landlords. We'd already touched on communication, and I do wonder whether there needs to be a more formal mechanism for councillors to feed into your, and what that would look like, I think would be really useful in your ideal world. And obviously, when we did our walk around, we identified that lighting was a challenge. And how can we support that work with county to reduce risk factors in the areas that are more challenging because of their history and their geography? So we'll deal with that one first.
That was 3 questions in one. That's okay. So, fine. So the challenges around drugs is one of those things which we've talked, which let's get that off in the first instance. So yes, information intelligence is one of those difficulties that we have. We've talked about it already this evening. People that are willing to come forward and be open and share that information with us and let us build up that picture. There is vulnerability that's in that as well. So particularly around county lines, and you've referred to that as well, there may be individuals who are at risk of exploitation as a result of that, and actually there is a fine line that is between somebody that is a victim and somebody that may well be a perpetrator of a crime, and we need to understand exactly what that looks like. Building all of that intelligence picture together, looking at several different locations as well, and how people are running. We need to have that information that comes together, that builds up that picture in order to be able to pull out the key players in those county lines in order to be able to respond to that properly. There are always individuals that are coming in and are feeding back in, so you might take out one kingpin, for a better phrase, and someone else is very willing to take that line. So those constantly challenges are always there, and that information coming in. Exporting of drugs is a big problem. We work along with our partners over at oh my gosh, what's the word that's gone out of my head? Little people that come in and out. Border Force. No, Border Force is what I was talking about. Sorry, having a moment, having a woman's moment. So those people. So we work with those individuals in order to be able to take out those big information. Information is one of those things. A constant train of people that are willing to come in. So it's an ongoing piece of work which will probably never go away. Drugs is one of those oldest things. You talked about landlords. I know which incident you're referring to. You know, some of that information that we've already touched on the issue earlier on. This particular landlord, and it isn't unique to this scenario, has individuals that have consistently come in and they haven't had the care of their property in order to ensure that that property is the best that it could be in order for people to live, who are living in that property, to be their best versions of themselves. So there are some challenges that need to go back through the council, through us to support the council in order to ensure that that landlord is meeting their statutory obligations in relation to into the care of that property, to ensure that people have got the best quality of life. That's essentially what we all want to do. Those challenges need to be across the partnership, not just here at the CSP, but much wider across the council in order to be able to support people to put those challenges in and hold those people to account. Take away in their licences, actually, if they're not meeting those obligations of their licences. We need to be very challenging in relation to that. The other 2 things that you mentioned, see, there were 4 questions in total, not just 3. The communications, and in fact, Councillor Laws and I had a conversation last week in relation to actually what does communications across the councillors, across the district look like going forward. And there is a real challenge to make sure that you are understanding what we are doing as police, that we are meeting your needs and you understand what we need to do. So I'm in a fortunate position that I have this week appointed a new neighbourhood policing inspector. That neighbourhood policing inspector's first job that we've discussed with Councillor Laws is to say actually we need to make sure that that communication piece that's coming out to you as councillors is frequent, is open and honest and transparent about what we can and cannot do, and that's one of the promises that I've made to Councillor Laws earlier on this week. That's a piece of work that's going to be in progress. That hasn't started yet. That new individual hasn't even landed in the new POB, so we'll have to understand a little bit about what that looks like. But what I will say, and all of the people around the table here today have always been able to have that contact with me, and I will come out. I've been out with Councillor Osborne as well, so I've been able to do that work and make sure that you come into him. The final thing that you said was about lighting, and again, it's about working across the piece to understand what does that look like, where can we put bids in, and to support that work that needs to be done. And yes, you're right, we absolutely identified that lighting was a particular issue in your ward, and hopefully we can work with you in order to be able to progress that.
Okay, Councillor Law and Paul are going to come in, and then we'll come back to Councillor Rippingale. Councillor Law.
Yes, I just wanted to come in and sort of like sometimes it's helpful, isn't it, to sort of give examples, tangible examples of what's been achieved. And I know that something that Councillor Summers worked on and over a considerable period of time, and then this was happening when I took on portfolio, was work around improvements around North Station Road. And part of that, there was a lot of work in terms of intelligence building a case showing that there needed to be funding to improve lighting there, to improve CCTV. Then a case could be made, and those improvements have been made, and there's been a lot of work with residents, with other businesses, stakeholders in that area, and improvements have been brought about. So sometimes it can take sort of months or years, but you know, again, it's that partnership approach, and it's residents being open to sort of speak to us and police. But you know, and I think something that's come out really importantly tonight is about the communication and people being heard and us being able to act on that. Paul.
Yes, thank you. I mean, we also have CCTV improvements, North Station Road, the new project on the moors, the funding. I think the whole project's about £100,000 of extra funding to make that area safe for people to use. Castle Park, extra CCTV. And with regards to lighting, we asked for the information as to where people feel vulnerable. You know, we had a youth forum here, and a number of the young people said, "Oh, this particular area," and that gets taken back. Obviously, it's not as easy as just throwing up some lights and whatever. It requires, there's a lot of regulations around it and what can be cited. But if the areas are highlighted and there are problems, then we generally work as a partnership very well to mitigate things as best we can.
Okay, so there is a new youth strategy coming down the line with quite a bit of funding behind it. Has the partnership started to look at how this could be used to tackle youth ASB and county lines in providing, you know, safe adults and safe hubs for children? And how do you think community organisations can help deliver that and contribute to reducing ASB, because we can't do everything?
We've been party to various meetings about that developing strategy, and we are waiting to look at how we can take that further. So, you know, we have a meeting, for example, with the PFCC coming up, so we'll be talking to them about how the CSPs can get involved in that. We have a youth early intervention working group, and that's something that as a working group we're looking at as well, in terms of where partners can tap into that funding and for what purpose. So it is on our radar.
Sorry, can I also say that we've just introduced in Tiptree the first community alcohol partnership. It's the first in Essex, and the idea is not that Tiptree has a problem with drinking. I'd just like to point out for the residents of Tiptree, we're not blaming you, but it's an educational programme that the schools can get involved in, parents are involved in, the supermarkets, the offline, everybody that's selling alcohol is involved in, and the idea is we educate the young people and their parents and everyone else that will then potentially remove some of the causes of ASB, i.e. drinking. And if it's a success in Tiptree, and we know that other partner agencies are looking at that to see if it can go wider within Essex. So we do look at other ways of tackling ASB rather than just enforcement.
Thank you. Councillor Rickingale, you have any more questions?
Yeah. I think from my perspective, what's become really clear in some of the work and listening exercises that I've done is that parents don't feel safe letting their children go out into, say, the townhouse, because it's like they're going into the city centre at night, and actually there is a big scope for more localised projects to tackle ASB. I know that we've had particular issues on Old Heath Rec, again because of lighting, but again it's how do you engage those young people in something that's productive rather than, you know, trashing a play park or etc. That's just a comment on there. Just to go back to Vorg, and mainly because I've spent part of the day in Islington's Vorg strategy, what learning are we doing from other councils who are a little bit further along in terms of that partnership work and some of the programmes that other councils in the country are leading?
One of the many hats I wear, I'm part of the Vorg strategic group, so not just a part, I'm an attendee, and we listen to each other and the national strategies, and we identify ways of working. And obviously Essex, the police are represented, obviously all the partners to deal with VOG, and it's always constant learning, because obviously if you look nationally, they've just done a whole campaign with all the sports stars saying, you know, it's not acceptable. So as a strategic organisation, we have a voice in and ears to listen out as to what's coming there, so that we're not just on our own making it up as we go along and doing our best. We're actually getting a wider picture from external areas.
Tracking back to what we were talking about, the migrant community, what engagement work are we doing with them around domestic violence? Because obviously they can be an underrepresented group in terms of coming forward. Is there any specific work that's taking place within the partnership to work with the BAME community?
Glad you asked. Our safeguarding officer, who is a council employee, has been, we've taken additional funding from the PFCC to target DA, and that officer was actually working for a number of days per week within Rama to tackle DA within that very specific demographic of people. So it was tackled directly within the CSP and from CCC.
Can I ask whether there's been any work done with other community groups? Because I understand that Rama is a big part of that work, but obviously there's a wider demographic.
Thank you. I mean, I'm happy to come in here. So we work really closely with a whole range of community organisations and community groups who represent a range of global majority populations, so that we can make sure that we extend our support. Internally, we have champions within our organisation who we train in a whole range of cultural issues, so that when somebody reaches out to us, we are able to understand what impacts them, particularly from a cultural perspective. And we have our website is translatable into a whole range of languages, and we have Language Line, and I've got a report that shows me all the different languages that we have got translation services for over the last year. So we do all of that. We also work in partnership with an organisation called Changing Pathways, who work in the south, and they have a specific BAME service, so they offer some advice to us. In terms of the numbers of people that we support, our numbers of people that we support from Global Majority in Colchester has grown up to 13% of the people that we support, which is greater than the population statistics of about 9%. So we outperform our local population in terms of reaching in, but we have a whole range. We have a really wide range of community groups, and we go out, we go to them rather than expecting them to come us, and we've come to us, and we've grown community champions as well, because we are conscious that actually people may well want to reach into their own community for advice, but equally they may not want to reach into their own community because they won't want their community to know, depending on what the cultural implications of domestic abuse are. So we try a whole range of things, but we are outperforming our local statistics. So I think we're doing okay.
Okay, I'd like to hear questions from Councillor Osborne and Rowe, and then I'm going to remind folks why we're here today and read out some specifics from the report just to reflect. Okay, Councillor Osborne.
A few years ago, I attended a local firebreak style programme delivered under its former name, the Prince's Trust. I experienced firsthand the profound impact it had on confidence, resilience and emotional healing, particularly for those who may have experienced trauma and domestic abuse. Programmes like this can play a powerful role in helping individuals reclaim the word survivor with strength and dignity. We're grateful to have representation from Essex County Fire and Rescue Service. Thank you for joining us this evening. Would there be opportunity to explore whether Essex County Fire and Rescue Service, in partnership with local community organisations such as Next Chapter, might consider collaborating to deliver a similar initiative for survivors within our community? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, and thank you for acknowledging that and the good work that we do. Absolutely, we're always looking for new sort of partnerships and new sort of fire breaks to be laid on. We're currently working with the Community Safety Partnership to see if we can sort of put some additional courses on for, there's a couple of projects which have approached us. So certainly I can take that away outside of this meeting and put you in contact with the team that sort of put all together the content and the courses, and as the station commander for Colchester I would happily support that as well.
Great question. Thank you for the answer. Do you have anything else, Councillor Osborne? Okay, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. I think I had a couple of questions, about 4 or so, but hopefully they're relatively quick. The first one was going to be on CCTV, but I'm pretty sure that's already been resolved already. Just a second ago, it was mentioned around translation, and that just sort of triggered something in my mind as to, could you just explain, and I'm sure we're already looking at this, but with the advent of AI, etc., how are we sort of, looking to utilise that going forward to improve the efficiency and reduce the cost of having to provide all these, multiple language documents and, translation services and everything else that we provide in this area? If you could just give us a quick overview of how we're working on that, I'd really appreciate it.
So we don't put a lot of money into translating our website. So I think it's probably a Google thing that you can plug in as a widget onto your website that gives you. I can't guarantee its accuracy, but I'm sure that it gives you enough of an accurate translation for you to get the relevant information from our website. We haven't moved into the AI sphere in terms of direct translation when we are speaking to clients, because we are in incredibly sensitive discussions and people are traumatised and upset and need that human touch. So we work really carefully to make sure that the person who is translating, we have quite strict guidelines as well, that they can't be a family member. We try not to draw them from the community that they are in as well, because we want to be absolutely sure around confidentiality and not impacting somebody's safety. So we use paid translation lines so that we can be absolutely guaranteed as to the quality and the independence of the translation. I'm not sure at the moment that AI is developed enough for us to fully be confident around that kind of translation. We're looking at it for a range of different things, but I think at the moment it's a bit patchy in what it brings back. So
I appreciate that. I thought you may say something along those lines, but I think it's just interesting for anyone who's listening, that they're the sort of questions that people ask, and I think that for them to understand and hear the nuance around the work that you do, I think that's important. So I do appreciate that. Thank you. Look, I think in general, and it makes sense that we tend to focus on sort of the town centre, and especially sort of, I think we've already spoken about it, sort of, antisocial behaviour, things like that we have in central Colchester. Being someone who represents the villages and the rural areas, I'd just like to add sort of a couple of points around that and sort of, just ask some questions. I mean, from my perspective, sort of some of the antisocial behaviour that we get in the villages, there tends to be sort of, speeding, rural gatherings, noise nuisances, you get things like that. Speeding, as you said, fly tipping. I know that's sort of done somewhere else, but I mean, I think in the report it emphasises, I'm pretty sure I read this, it emphasises that there's sort of hotspot targeting inside the rural areas. But I can't find a strategy as to how we manage to deal with that. So could you just expand on sort of how we look to manage those hotspot areas? What are we doing to try to improve on them going forward? And I'm sure there's lots of great work going on, so I'd just like to give you a bit of an opportunity to just tell us what you're doing. Thank you.
Well, actually, ASB is currently under review, and so much as I attended a meeting the other day, which was the ASB strategy meeting. I attend a lot of meetings. And basically Essex Police are looking at their strategy on how to deal with ASB, but what was really good was it's not Essex Police, it's Essex Police and the councils all working together on the new ASB strategy with this, if I remember correctly, it was 6 specific areas of focus on how to deliver messaging, how to get the information, how to target things. ASB is one of those interesting points where Essex Police have obviously, they're triaging to make sure that the right organisation are going to deal with ASB, because a lot of people say anything that's a problem is ASB, but obviously speeding is a traffic offence. Noise is a statutory offence for environmental protection. People say I can smell cannabis, well it's drug use. Somebody's graffitied a wall, well it's criminal damage. Unfortunately, there isn't that single definition of ASB, and what people see as a problem, the council may say that's a policing issue, the police may say that's a council issue, and we sometimes get the ASB tennis, which is why we're working together to make sure it doesn't happen. You are correct, the city centre gets an awful lot of focus because it is the area we want the tourists to visit and the visitors. And trust me, every year we will discuss as portfolio holders and the CSP and partners on how to deal with street drinkers and how to deal with those. It is a big problem we work with all the time. It's just constant. For the rural issue, everything around ASB, and you talk about hotspots, is about reporting. A hotspot does not develop unless it is reported to death. With the greatest of respect, people need to be saying, this is the issue, this is the issue, this is the issue. ASB can be reported directly on our website, and obviously it can be reported to the police. Funding for ASB and the resources to target it will be directed, unless Michelle tells me otherwise, on hotspot reporting. So please get people to report. And then maybe we go, that's not ASB, that's a whatever, but at least we can tell the police this is the information we're getting. So the simple message is, sadly, report, 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 and we'll come back to it and deal with it for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that's a very good message to give, something that I know that we give to residents on a regular basis, tell people to report things, because ultimately if it's logged, you've got the data, then you can begin to understand it and then put something in place to solve it. So I fully understand that message, and thank you for pointing that out. The last point, I think either last year or the year before, I raised some points around machinery theft and sort of in a rural context, cars, machinery, people breaking onto land when they're not supposed to be there, and without the landowner's permission, let's put it that way. I didn't see sort of a huge amount in the report around it. Is that something that we think that's started to sort of die down, or are we not getting as many reports around it? Could you just expand on that area and just give us a bit of background on that, please? I'd really appreciate it.
Certainly. In Colchester, within the district, in the last 12 months, we've seen very little of that. That doesn't mean to say that that isn't going on in Essex. It absolutely is. We have seen it particularly in some of the other rural areas, up towards Braintree and Usselford, and out towards Tendring as well. Within the Colchester district, we have had very little of that sort of reporting that's been brought to my monthly taskings, where I need to put all my resources and bids and stuff. So we'll talk about machinery theft, we're talking about burglary, we're talking about trespass. Very little of that rural crime has come to my attention over the last 12 months. It has to sit in other districts, but yeah, not in Colchester.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because I don't know a lot about it either, but yeah, thank you very much, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rowe. We are coming towards the latter stages of this meeting, in my humble opinion, but I just wanted to remind us what we're here for, which is to look at the 4 identified key areas for the partnership for the next year, 6 to 7. And I'm just going to give you those 4 themes, and obviously there's lots beneath it, but just to remind us and folks at home, we're here to consider, in no particular order, preventing domestic abuse and sexual offences while fostering safer, healthier relationships. Next point, safeguarding individuals vulnerable to violence or exploitation. Next point, addressing antisocial behaviour, neighbourhood crimes and their root causes. And then finally, promoting safety, inclusivity and social, economic and environmental well-being for all of Colchester's communities. And there's lots beneath that, but I just wanted to remind folks that that's what we hear there. They are the strategic areas of focus. Do I see any more members with questions? I did see you, Councillor Summers, and I see Councillor Willetts as well. So Councillor Summers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just looking through some of the statistics, and there seems to have been a bit of a rise in hate crime offences, and obviously that's a concern with a multicultural city. I was just wondering, is that again, do you think it's a confidence thing, that people are being more confident in reporting these things, or are we genuinely seeing a lot more hate crime within Colchester?
So there's different demographics around hate crime, and it's very difficult to put it all into one pot. Lots of people might experience hate crime for lots of different reasons, whether that be because of the colour of their skin, their faith, it might be their sexual orientation, and so hate. Oh, I do apologise, I've done 30 minutes of activity, I don't know why. It's saying I've done 94 calories, which I don't think is true, so I don't know what
Chief
that's
Inspector,
about.
within this, I mean, I'm not an expert on the definition of hate crime, but I'm intrigued. Does, for example, road rage fall into that category?
Not necessarily. It depends on the way in which the motivation behind somebody's actions is. So you could almost clarify practically any crime that could potentially have a hate element around it. If it's motivated, that crime is motivated by hate, whether that be from a protected characteristic that I was referring to, there is some potential in relation to that. So some of it will be because of greater confidence in policing and greater confidence in reporting. We have seen an uplift in hate crime in relation to the trans community, and that's a result of some of the findings and some of the changes in legislation that came out early part of last year. So we have seen an increase in relation to that. And obviously we've had all of the riots over the summer that was happening down in Epping. Whilst we didn't see any of that particularly in the Colchester area, there would have been things that would have very localised, very small numbers that would have been affected by individuals that live here. So I think we have to be really conscious about the society that we're living in at the moment, that some people have got some very strong opinions about certain individuals regardless of their characteristics in lots of different things. We have to be really respectful of everybody's views and opinions, and sometimes people aren't. And we have to respond to that appropriately. So in terms of hate crime, yes, we have seen an increase. We need to understand what hate crime is, and it has lots of different facets, and there's lots of political and social changes that have meant that that has happened. I think for me the most important thing is us recognising where hate crime is. Those individuals are vulnerable and they need to be supported appropriately in order to either go through the criminal justice process or for people to be appropriately educated, because sometimes that's an issue as well. So it's a very difficult sphere for us to be able to support society more widely in relation to that, and there's lots of things that we can do as a police perspective, but as more widely as a CSP, to understand how do we support victims, how do people ensure that they know that they're a victim, making sure that people who are vulnerable are supported, and make sure that perpetrators are challenged appropriately. So there's a lot to be done in that area for lots of different reasons and lots of different protected characteristics.
Thank you. I know I've previously done some training around hate crime and sort of like awareness sort of training. I just wondered if there was anything more in the pipeline that's coming through. I think some of it came from Essex County Council, I think, previously. I've tried to get as many councillors signed up to it as possible, but didn't see too many others on there.
We work with Essex Police actually for the hate crime ambassador and awareness training. So that's an ongoing relationship that we have with Lou in Colchester, and it's something that we will raise awareness. We will have we had a stall in Culver Square I think it's October time. We've got relationships developing within Colchester Hospital to expand the training across their staff, as well as having an awareness stall for the general public as well. So there's things in the pipeline. That training is something that we promote through our partners, and is available for anyone to book onto. It's free, and it's something that is available as and when and on request.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Willits.
Chairman, addressing the strategic assessment rather than the sort of the details behind it, I have several points to make. The committee, at its last meeting in whenever it was, March 2025, asked that the recommendations from the partnership, its key areas of focus, should be shared with a wider group of partners and organisations. And I think the one that was mentioned here was with parish councils, town councils and community councils. I attend the parish councils in the area that I represent. I'm not aware that they have received the information about the key areas and so on. It may have happened on the odd occasion when I didn't attend the parish council meetings, but could I have an assurance that the panel's recommendation in this area has been carried out?
The draft key areas of focus were circulated to all parish council clerks to take forward within their individual areas. We did receive feedback, I think, from 3 parish councils, which were taken on board and responded to. The draft wording was shared with them and given them that opportunity for feedback.
I must just have been unlucky then, Chairman. The next point I have is continue on point 515, page 19 of the agenda on the representation. Looking through the list of organisations from which we're seeking feedback, many of them seem to be related to social services and ethnic community issues, and only a very small minority to the business interests of the city, although we must remember that the money we spend on public services, over a third of it comes from the business community. If I can give you an instance, the town centre is in decline and is re-emerging at great strength on the periphery of the town. For instance, at Tollgate, Stane Park, we have the largest Sainsbury's in Europe, the most profitable M&S in the Anglia region, a B&Q, which must be famous for something, but I'm not quite sure, and certainly the largest 2 data centres in the city, yet we have representation from the bid, very useful representation, but there doesn't seem to be any similar representation from significant business interests at Tollgate Stane Park. We also see the Northern Gateway springing up as a significant area for recreation and possibly retail. And same question, there you've got an area where lots of people are attending, lots of money is being spent, and I guess there will be associated problems, yet we don't seem to have a representative or a contact point with these other areas of essential business within the town. So can I ask whether the partnership has any intentional proposals to try and find representatives who can represent the business interests of those key commercial areas in the city?
I think we certainly can look at whether there is an overall centre manager in those areas. I don't know, Vinny, maybe you might be able to help us. It is something we wouldn't be able to approach the individual businesses, but if there is an overall centre manager that we can link in with, we'd be more than happy to share the information with them this time next year.
If we can have that as an action point on the minutes. And the final point concerning the overall
Let me just hold you there for a second, Dennis, just protocol. Let me just check members. I mean, I think what Councillor Willis is saying is very sensible. Clearly there is town centre organisations here, but, you know, you didn't mention, for example, Councillor Willis' Severals Business Park, which has got thousands of people working there, and it might be that they've got a representative organisation of some sort. I know they don't have a structured bid, but maybe they will do one day. But I'm sure that you're making a good point here. But I just need to check with members. Do you agree? And therefore, shall we make this recommendation and have it formally noted? I'm seeing lots of hands now. Councillor Law, your portfolio holder.
You know, no, I understand it's a valid point. I think also perhaps as we mentioned that it would be helpful where they've got like an overall centre manager. It's difficult, obviously, because we've got the bid that covers the city centre, so those other areas, for example, don't have them, and so it can be harder, but no, I take that point on board.
Samantha. Sorry, Vinny.
Culture to Business Against Crime, which is the Crime Reduction Partnership, are looking in extending their boundary, per se, to how they can assist Stane Park, Tollgate, etc., to include them on things like our DISC and data intelligence sharing platforms, so that we can have almost sort of separate areas. But that's in conjunction with the work with Essex Police. We've seen some fantastic work with the Co-op, retail stores. That sort of thing is a sort of continuation, and yes, we can start sharing, and of course we have contacts for property management teams, whether that's Savills or whoever it is that manages those areas. We can start talking to them and start including them.
This all feels very positive, and I think everyone's in agreement with the very good point you made, as you were, Councillor Willett.
You know, a final point is actually on the nature of the strategic assessment that we have to comment on this evening. It would probably be unkind to say that it is bland, given the amount of work that has gone in, and that it really typifies, it summarises a lot of work that's being done by the partnership, but it does seem to be sort of something for everyone in the recommendations, and one can argue that that is the way they should be. The key priorities should include a bit of everything to keep people in there, but perhaps prioritised where there is seen to be sort of significant social concern. What I can't quite get to grips with is the fact that the recommendations don't identify what are the rapidly changing areas of crime which are identified in the documentation. We have two documents before us. We have the Appendix B, the risk matrix on page 119, and we also have a categorization of crime types on page 25. Now, the risk matrix looks at how specific crimes have increased in Colchester over the years since we last reviewed this. The crime type analysis on page 25 benchmarks us against 4 other similar-sized conurbations: Basildon, Chelmsford, Southend, and Thurrock. But the results that we have in terms of the proposals that you were just reading out, Chairman, do not seem to identify where there have been significant changes or emphasis. For instance, if you look at the risk matrix on Annex B, the area of maximum increase is vehicle interference, where it's gone up by 95%. The second most important area is the high-risk domestic abuse, which has gone up by 43. Then we have shoplifting at 35%, various others down to business robbery at 17%. And the recommendations we have do not seem to take into account that there are certain areas where there have been increases this year, and where perhaps there should be a special focus on those areas where the increase has been, say, more than 15% over last year. Perhaps that happens automatically, I don't know, Chairman, but it's not actually captured in the strategic assessment. There is another way of looking at it, and that's the crime type analysis on page 25, where, as we've got the number of crimes for each of our 5 partners, we can produce an average for the group, and there we see that, for instance, 26% of rape across the entire across the 5 partners, 5 areas, is in Colchester, significantly higher than our benchmark partners. So there we have a particular crime which is on the increase, and where Colchester already has 26% more of it than the other 4 partners. So one would think, under those circumstances, that would get a special mention in the strategic assessment for the forthcoming year. And likewise, vehicle intrusion, 16% higher than the benchmark average, and 59% increase. So again, one would expect to see some sort of recognition in the strategic assessment that, as well as all the good work that's going on, business as usual, there are certain crimes which are on the increase. Either more of them are appearing in Colchester than elsewhere, or the rate of growth in Colchester is higher. But that recognition doesn't seem to shine through in the strategic assessment. So I just asked the question, Chairman, why is it that these specific areas, where either more of it's in Colchester or it's increasing faster than previous years, why are they not addressed as part of the strategic assessment with special efforts to make sure that the partners focus and address on those key areas?
Okay, Chief Inspector, not explicit enough in there for Councillor Willits. What do you say to that?
Understood where his concerns are. I think it's really important that we recognise that the work of the CSP needs to be where we're going to get our best benefit for the society as a whole, in terms of those people that are vulnerable within our society. When we look at the nature of the crimes that you're referring to, and if I take vehicle interference particularly as a very good example of that, yes, you're right, we have seen an increase, particularly in vehicle interference across Colchester, across the district over the last 12 months. However, I need to make sure that where we are focusing our efforts in the CSP is where we are managing as best we possibly can the impact of the threat, risk and harm that those crimes have. Vehicle interference is very much a crime whereby individuals are not subject to the same levels of threat, harm and risk as some other crime types, where we might be focusing on rape and on vulnerability, on DA is a particular mention in there. Vehicle interference is where somebody, and a good example is where somebody's got the mens rea in order to be able to steal that car or steal from that car, and interferes with the vehicle by trying a door handle or something along those sort of lines. It is really important, particularly in an area where we have got limited resources and there is an element of austerity, that our focus is on those crimes that cause the most harm to the people of the society in Colchester. Vehicle interference is not one of those crimes that I would consider to be at the level that causes that same threat, risk and harm to individuals. Equally, there are other crimes in there that may well fall within that category, where I will put that focus in, because actually it does have a huge amount of impact on the individuals in Colchester, where the threat, harm and risk may not be exactly the same, but we are going to focus on shoplifting, for instance, where we have also got increases of crime, because actually that has a much bigger impact on the society, much wider than that. That crime in relation to shoplifting, for instance, is a business crime. However, the individuals that are perpetrating that crime are individuals that are causing the ASB, they're the street drinkers. And actually I'm going to focus on those sorts of crimes, because the harm to the wider society is much more recognised. They may well be stealing in order to fill other habits. It may be that I need to put the focus on those perpetrators in terms of community behaviour orders and getting them in front of court. So when we're making these assessments, we need to understand exactly where we do, what the best decisions we can make in order to support a much wider society. So whilst I have got increases in some crime types, they don't cause the same threat, harm and risk, and therefore we are going to put our focus on those ones which have the best safeguarding for the population within Colchester.
Gosh, Councillor Willetts, you've just created a wormhole for me, because I'm looking at vehicle interference statistics that you've highlighted, and I was thinking to myself, you know, if I had, I don't know, a weekend Porsche on my driveway and someone nicked that at night, yeah, that'd be pretty inconvenient, but it's my weekend Porsche. But if I've got my work van with all my tools in it, and that's interfered with and prevents me from going to do a day's work the next day, and that's going to be pretty devastating if I'm a self-employed person trying to get by with ever-increasing tax burdens and all the rest of it. I wonder if, I'm not going to put you on the spot, Chief Inspector, but I wonder if there is some sensitivity around consideration to sort of the domestic vehicle versus the self-employed work van vehicle. Ms Jones, if you've got an answer to that, that's great.
I'm not sure that I have an answer to that, but I just wanted to replay some of the discussions that were had in the round when we were talking about these and how to draw out the priorities for the CSP, looking at the risk matrix. And the discussions we had were that actually not everything can be a priority, and clearly we've tried to as a collective to put things in that actually are based around the risk and harm and where we can get most impact for community safety from the funding and resources that we have, but also reflecting that actually there are a range of things that people can do as communities using community resources and Crime Stoppers and Neighbourhood Watch to actually be responsible for our own crime. And I think vehicle interference was absolutely one of those discussions that we had, which was actually you can look at the crime after the event, but actually from a community safety perspective and the prevention side of things, actually are we better putting activity into those community groups and those other resources that say to people, actually there's a whole heap of stuff that you can do yourself to make yourself less vulnerable to crime. That means that actually our scant resources can be used to investigate the really serious things that cause physical harm to people. So I think it's about trying to strike that balance between saying actually there's an awful lot that we can do for ourselves and trying to move away from the we're going to do everything to you and for you, and place a bit of that help and responsibility on our communities. So just to reflect that discussion, so we did actually talk about that point in fact, and I don't know whether it makes it better or worse that we actually made the actual decision that we weren't going to put that as a priority.
So I just wanted to also jump in on that. We all sat around as a community safety partnership. You know, there was a lot of partners in on that meeting, and like Councillor said, although it appears that certain things have prioritised, there was a lot of sort of genuine sort of want to improve the crime. There was a genuine sort of from everyone in that room for the safety of Colchester and to move that forward. So it wasn't just sort of police-led or crime-led; it was all the partners working together.
Okay, coming up to Q2, folks. Do I have more questions? Did you have anything else, Councillor Willetts?
You're not on the strategic assessment, though. It was backed onto the old crime sheet. I don't really want to go backwards, Chairman. It was what my family called granny fraud, which doesn't really appear as an issue on the strategic assessment. It may be distributed over it. We know that there are many approaches to the elderly, by telephone, by internet, trying to extract money from them, get them to change their bank accounts and so on. I'm not sure where this is shown on the strategic assessment. I mean, is it not there because it's all reported to the City of London as a central point and doesn't get fed back to us, or is it distributed over various headings within the strategic assessment that we have before us, or is this just too difficult to answer?
Let me cover off a little bit about fraud before I pass on to my colleagues here. Fraud is 40% of all crime. It's absolutely massive. And as you've already rightly pointed out, the investigation of fraud primarily, not in its entirety, but primarily sits with the City of London Police. And action fraud will go into, reports will go into the City of London Police in order to be able to investigate those. We do, however, do fraud investigations locally, and we work quite significantly with the banks, generally across the whole of Essex Police and across the country even, to be able to ensure that bank protocols are put into place and that individuals are locally seen by police officers, normally from my neighbourhood policing team, in order to protect them when they come to notice. What's really important is that what you're referring to is vulnerability. Vulnerability of people that live within the Colchester district. And I think what's really important within the strategy is that final key area of focus is actually making sure that we are focusing on those individuals that are vulnerable, and it would encapsulate those individuals. And I'm sure my colleagues in the CSP will talk about that a bit further.
Yeah, actually the fourth area of focus specifically, raise awareness, fraud prevention, personal safety to empower individuals and reduce victimisation. So fraud is a national problem. It will require a national solution. However, we can't hide behind that. And Councillor Law is very keen to point out on a number of occasions that when we talk about education and sharing information with people, that actually we need to consider those that aren't computer aware, don't have access to the computers. It doesn't help me because it's a very difficult way to get the message out, but it's certainly something we're aware of. So with regards to it being such a major problem, 40% of crime, we as a CSP are not going to be able to solve it. We could potentially reduce it on individual basis by educating and sharing information, and we are keen to do so. But again, when it comes to CSP and what we can deliver, we don't want to promise the world, because we're not going to deliver it, and there's no point us sitting here in 12 months' time saying we failed miserably when we promised you everything. So we are aware. We will try and take as many steps as we can to reach all of the people we're trying to protect and support, but there are limitations, I'm afraid.
Chairman, I just asked in the context of, we have a process where we have last year's statistics on reported crime, so that goes through to the strategic assessment by the partnership, and out comes the action plan. But here we have a sort of a difficult area of the fraud where there may well be a reference in the action plan, but it's not tracked back to anywhere in the crime statistics, which are the primary input to the strategic partnership's view on what should be the key priorities. So I just wonder, how do we quantify it? The model should work, that we should be able to see in all respects. Here is an area of crime that is carried through to the strategic assessment. The strategic assessment prioritises it and explains what is being done by the partners to reduce or to educate or to reduce the vulnerability. But we don't actually see that as an issue in the last year's crime reports. And that was what I was trying to understand. Is it sort of just inferred because it's allocated over the set of other crimes, like internet crime or whatever it might be, or is it something which doesn't actually appear on our list because we're not getting useful information or accurate information from the City of London Police on what is happening in Colchester?
I think it's fair to say that there is a gap of information there, from my personal knowledge, and particularly, and I'm sure there may well be others that can answer the question better. City of London Police deal with fraud, and that's where the information would normally sit. So I don't think it's in our risk matrix in terms of that perspective. So I'm not in a position to give you a better answer than that, but I'm happy to look into it and come back to you at a later stage if need be.
Councillor Willis, you have highlighted an interesting area there, because obviously if the crimes are happening in Colchester but they're investigated and recorded in London, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
The problem with fraud particularly, and it's not all fraud because there would be things, fraud is a very complex crime in order to investigate. Some of it will sit locally with our crime investigation departments at CID, because we know that it has happened within the district of Colchester, and they will be looking at those things, and it might be that it's something that has been done on a much more personal location based. Unfortunately, a huge amount of that 40% is not location specific to Colchester. It's going to be something that where the crime the perpetrator is not going to be in Colchester. It might not even be in the UK, it might not be in Essex. And that's where some of the challenges around some of the handling and investigation of fraud sits with the City of London Police, because they are absolutely the subject matter experts in that. So there are some very nuanced and challenged investigations around fraud that don't sit within Colchester District and therefore are not within our sphere of influence in the CSP to deal with.
Clearly time is getting late, Chairman. Is there a sort of briefing note that the committee could look at which would explain perhaps in greater detail, and how it is victims of fraud crimes? I appreciate that the crime may be carried out by a call centre in Cambodia or somewhere way off the beaten track, but the victim of the fraud crime could be could be anyone, but it seems to be increasingly sort of the elderly in Colchester. So I think we need a clear argument. If we can't identify how many victims there are of these fraud crimes in Colchester, then we just need to understand why that is and why it is being omitted from the statistics. And there may be very good reasons which we just can't overcome, but I think it's an area which would be useful for the committee to better understand.
Fraud offences is one of the sections in the strategic assessment report, the separate report. So that delves into the data in terms of how we compare to other areas of Essex and what the top 5 fraud types were. And it does outline in Colchester the areas where the most fraud offences were. So that is in the strategic assessment report rather than the crime and disorder report. So it is one of the appendices.
Members, we are coming towards the end of the evening. We have to note what is before us. Is there any formal recommendations at all, or are we finding consensus here to note the report before us and the good work of the partnership? Do I see any recommendations? Councillor Willis, you're poised.
Well, Chairman, I think our job is to scrutinise the overall process. I mean, we're scrutinising essentially the work of the partnership in terms of the data it receives, the action it takes, the group of people who are brought together to determine the priorities, and the outcome that we see and its dissemination to the local community, the life cycle of what we're doing. And certainly, I think what we've heard this evening, we've tested it in many areas of sort of crime collection, reporting, analysis, how the strategic partnership is composed and what they do. And in all the questions we ask, I don't think we found anything wanting in the way the partnership works, and they should just be congratulated on another good year's work in helping to keep the people of Colchester safe and secure.
Well, on that really positive note, I endorse that, and I'm looking around the room and I see smiles and nods. So I think that we have to thank you all for your attendance. It really is valued when you come along here. And I wish you all a very, very safe journey home. Mr. Clark, what else do I need to do formally tonight? That's it. Well, just while we're here, Chief Inspector, I just wanted to acknowledge the incredible work that your officers did in their extracurricular activities in Dedham on a Thursday recently. It was raining, I was there, and people were smiling, professional, and it was lovely, and clearly a huge undertaking. So congratulations to your officers for their great work and what you do in a broader sense, all of you. Thank you very much. Have a safe journey home.